So the Pittsburgh Steelers do end up defeating the New England Patriots in Foxborough by a final score of 21-14 in a game that, despite winning, and I think you can take the positive potentially that the Steelers did win this football game. Um, Ultimately, I think there's still so many big concerns with how this team has been playing. Because while the win is nice, uh, this team continues to look a lot like the same Steelers teams we've seen over the past couple of seasons, where we'll go up against kind of less quality opposition. Not to say that the Patriots are full of bad players. I think they have some of the building blocks to work on their rebuild. Um, but ultimately, there are just again so many questions about this Steelers football team, even despite coming away with the victory. And I guess talking about the positives, of which there really aren't all that much. You know, on the defensive side of the ball, I think you can have the positive that the defense really came to play today. At least on the splash plays, picked up 5 sacks, forced 5 turnovers. So at least on that front, they had a very good game. And again, the other benefit is, ultimately we won the football game. When we got into the red zone on offense, we were pretty efficient. Um, but outside of those facets of play, I think there are a lot of questions to be asked. Starting with the offense, this is a Steelers football team that continues to not be able to run the ball effectively. First of all, as today on the ground, Steelers as a whole only put up 203 yards, and that was only for 64 rushing yards on 26 attempts, which for a team that has so much depth at tight end, who has an offensive line that seems to be developing coming in. We obviously Jalen Warren being the kind of lead back. I think the fact that we're only rushing for about 2.5 yards a carry is something that's very concerning. Additionally, Aaron Rodgers didn't necessarily have the most explosive day. 16 to 23, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, but only 139 yards. And again, this offense doesn't seem to have a lot of momentum. And I'm not sure if that's because the O-line isn't great. I'm not sure if that's scheming at this point. I feel like we're asking the same questions every week, every year, as to, hey, what do we expect from this Steelers offense, the Steelers defense, kind of every side of the ball. And I guess something to at least credit Aaron Rodgers with is that in his post game interview, he did say like, hey, the offense was not good enough today, and so I do have a lot of respect for him for that. Of course, congratulations to Aaron for moving up to fourth on the all-time touchdowns list after his, I believe, his 2 touchdowns today, surpassing Brett Favre in that regard. But ultimately, on a day when you have a +4 turnover differential, this game should really look like what the Minnesota Vikings did to the Cincinnati Bengals earlier today, where you are putting up 30, 40 points when you force this many turnovers. And that can get stuff going. And for an offense where, again, I think there's been questions this entire offseason of what does Aaron Rodgers bring that Justin Fields and Russell Wilson didn't? And, obviously you get a little bit of veteran leadership there, but ultimately I'm not seeing a lot. Again, got some solid quick passes. Obviously the touchdown pass to Calvin Austin to take the lead late in the game. Was very nicely placed. He also had a really nice throw to DK Metcalf for his first touchdown of the game. But I think there's a lot of questions going into Dublin next week that, there are no consistencies with this football team that convince me to be positive about this win. Outside of those, those stats here and there, like, hey, we got a bunch of sacks, we got a bunch of turnovers, but if we're only winning by 7, that ultimately isn't going to matter against better teams, against teams who aren't going to make the sort of mistakes that the New England Patriots made today. Um, Moving to the defensive side of the ball, obviously props to the defense for coming out to play. Obviously the 5 turnovers that we forced were big. Again, plus 4 turnover margin due to one Aaron Rodgers interception. You had T.J. Watt with a fumble recovery, Darius Slay, Jabril Peppers, Peyton Wilson, all getting on the board with recoveries. Ramondre Stevenson really struggled to hold onto the ball, and so I think that as a team we took real good advantage of that. But again, the same things that we've been seeing as struggles over the past couple of weeks continue to come into account today. Despite the 5 sacks, Drake May still threw for about 260 yards. I think the defense being on the field for long stretches of time certainly didn't help. But New England on offense had 26 first downs to our 17. They had 369 total yards. It's another game where this Steelers front 7 and the Steelers defense, which is the most expensive defense in the league, and again, you'll probably hear me say that a lot this season, but let me restate it because I think it's incredibly important. The most expensive defense in the league has given up over 100 yards rushing each week to the Jets, to the Seahawks, and to the Patriots. And we play in a division where the Browns are going to want to run the football. The Ravens are going to especially want to run the football. You got the Bills where you're going to have to contain, a running game there that is burgeoning into a very strong unit. And you have the kind of Josh Allen there that you have to kind of be concerned with. The Chiefs, maybe not so much. But if you want to compete in the AFC, especially as the weather gets colder, you not only have to establish a run game like we have struggled to, but you also have to be able to stop it, which I don't think we've shown a way that we'd be able to stop that so far either. And I don't know if that comes down to, I know we're missing a couple of pieces. Darius Slay tends to fill more of that roaming safety role. Sorry, not Darius Slay. Darius Slay is corner. Deshaun Elliott fills more of that roaming safety role. At least did last year. So perhaps him being out is a little bit there. Obviously, we did not have Alex Highsmith. And again, maybe another positive here is, if you wanna call it that, was we didn't necessarily give up a 100-yard rusher, an individual rusher like we have in the past couple of weeks. Drake May, 7 carries for 45 yards, was the Patriots' leading rusher. But ultimately, I think there's still a lot of concerns to be had outside of getting turnovers, getting sacks, which was good to see as a return to form. I guess on that kind of pass rush mark, it was really nice to see T.J. Watt start to become a bit more of a factor in the game, hopefully start to find some of his footing. Obviously, he had the fumble recovery, like I mentioned earlier. Additionally, he did pick up his first 2 sacks of the season, so good to hopefully see him start to get back on track. And of course, that's his first. Those are his first sacks in his past 6 games, dating back to, if I'm not mistaken, the Eagles last year, kind of late in the year, where he did pick up an injury, and so perhaps some stuff from there still nagging, and again maybe still getting up to speed in some spots, but ultimately, and I'm gonna go ahead and have us take a look at some of the stats here in a second. But there are still so many questions, and I'm going to focus on the team stats here that I'm going to cut to just kind of highlight some of this point. But ultimately, a lot of the concern here as we look at this kind of team stat is we got outgained by almost 170 yards. Yes, we had the turnovers, but first downs we were worse. We continued to get penalized a lot. We weren't good on third down. We couldn't stop the Patriots on fourth down until that end of the game. Efficient in the red zone, but didn't possess the ball. So I think there's still a lot of questions. And then here's, of course, the kind of further look at some of those stats. But against better competition, which we will face, and again, I assume that this team wants to compete for playoff wins, for, hell, maybe even a Super Bowl with how much this defense was talked up in the offseason by members of the offense, members of the defense. We have to see something different. We have to, be shown to be a better tackling team. We need to show that we can force turnovers against the Baltimores, the Kansas Cities, the Buffaloes, like that level of competition in the NFL is what we got to have these games against. And importantly, good football teams capitalize on other teams' mistakes. And we did not do that today. And that is what concerns me the most, is the Steelers, despite winning, were given more and more opportunities. And having the kind of other game of Minnesota versus Cincinnati going on the other side, in which Minnesota was able to force a bunch of turnovers against a Cincinnati team that is also struggling, that is also sputtering, that is down a Joe Burrow. So I think there's, could be some impact there. But, the Vikings were also starting Carson Wentz, so they weren't necessarily at their full strength either. But importantly, they were able to take advantage of the Bengals' mistakes. They were able to force those turnovers and then go down the field and score points. And I haven't seen anything from this Steelers team that convinces me that either A, we can force those turnovers consistently, B, that we can capitalize on those turnovers, or that C, our defense, doesn't have to rely on these big splash plays, getting turnovers, getting sacks, to be an effective unit. Because at the end of the day, the Patriots were still in this game. They were driving down the field late. It came down to a fourth and short scenario where it was just a wide receiver trying to break a tackle, ended up going backwards, not forcing a turnover on downs, and ultimately that would be it. And as much as a part of me wants to be positive about this win, I can't, because these type of wins, these type of games, especially where we can't separate ourselves from a team that, again, despite having some very good pieces, and I think compliments to Mike Grable for having a team that continued to fight despite all of the mistakes that they made, that there's something there to this team needs to do these kind of things consistently, and they need to prove that they are different from the teams over the past couple of years where we finished 9-8, we finished 10-7, there are pieces, there are moments, but it's nothing solidified, nothing concrete. And I think having Aaron Rodgers leading that locker room, being potentially a veteran presence, taking some very good accountability for how the offense performed today, hopefully that carries into next week as we head to Dublin to take on, again, the team that I mentioned a couple of times in this one, in the Minnesota Vikings, coming off a big win against the Cincinnati Bengals. And so they're going to be coming in with a lot of momentum. And ultimately, this is, I think, one of the first big checkpoints, one of the first big tests of the season, especially as we're about to go into a very early bye week of can we put together any sort of momentum? Can we put together a complete game on both sides of the ball? Can we, get pass rushed onto Carson Wentz? Can we stop a Vikings run game that has been very solid, led by Jordan Mason? Um, and again, can we establish an offense of our own? Is going to be the big question. So that'll be it for now. Again, Steelers picking up the win, 21-14, but still so many concerns, so many red flags about this football team that I can't ignore. But ultimately, we'll have to see what happens next Sunday morning as we head to Dublin, and so I'll be seeing you then. Till next time, though, have a good one.